All right, so this is where I'm at in the process. I just want you to see it, and then we'll kind of step back into it.
Color theory is an important part of the design process. What we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors. The color wheel is the foundation for building successful color schemes. The color wheel is composed of 3 primary colors. Mixing neighboring primary colors evenly creates what's referred to as secondary colors. Mixing a primary and a secondary creates tertiary colors.
Okay, so that's only about 26 seconds or so. So it's still a work in progress, obviously, but I want you to see the process for this that'll just be continued throughout the entire project. Okay, so the last we left off, we had the audio we needed to cut up. So what I did was I brought the audio in. You'll see that I named each piece of audio in the order that seemed appropriate. Okay. Here's all my colors. You'll see instead of naming them 9, A, B, C, D, I just went with 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That way I can see which order they were read in if I need to ever go back to that too. Okay, either way it's fine. You just have to make sure that you know which ones you're doing. So I brought them in. Obviously I've organized them. Inside of my color theory folder I have an audio folder. And inside of here I have all of my files. Okay, so everything's nice and organized out here and inside here. I also have an artwork folder that I brought in that has the MCC logo inside there. I have my comps, so I have my color wheel, I have my color wheel comp, and then I have my vertical bars, which something I played around with. And then I have my main comps, which are basically the end ones. Okay, so these ones are just kind of playing around, except for that one. And then these ones are more of like the finished ones. Okay, and then I have my solids, and then I have just this texture here. And we'll get into more of this, like kind of picking a texture and kind of finishing it up a little bit. But I like to see, like when I'm working here, this is very simple and very smooth, but I also like to see here what it's going to look like in the end. So I always want to keep those two things in mind, that as I work, I want to bounce back and forth between what these different steps look like. Okay. And then way back here on this color wheel, this is, where I had that thing I was showing in class. And then here is, more finished compilation of that. All right, so to get started, what I did was I created a brand new comp. The duration doesn't really matter too much right now. You can start it off at a minute because you know that you're going to be going probably either close to a minute or a little bit past it. So then what we're going to do is bring in an audio clip. So if these are numbered, it's very easy because you just drag down the audio clip and then you can see there it is. Now I don't want to drag all of these down and kind of confuse the situation. I want to do one at a time. Okay. And then to make things a little bit easier on us, I don't want to play this audio every single time I hit the space bar.
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
Okay, color theory is an important part of the design process. I don't need to hear that every time because I know what it's going to do. So what I'm going to do though is I want to kind of maybe trigger or highlight some of the important areas, like where I say color theory design process. I may want to emphasize where those are at in here so that as I start working, I know exactly when I can have, what I should have, some things pop in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this word. I'm going to use the space bar to hit play, and I'm going to use the asterisk on the numeric keypad. Okay, now watch what happens.
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
Okay, so you see how I said color theory is an important part of the design process. So these two little tickers that are here allow me to basically see where that's at. So now I can just mute this while I work. That way I don't have to really worry about seeing it, and my previews will go quicker, and I won't get this like jerky motion when that happens. Okay, so now I'm going to create a background. So I'm just going to create a new solid. This color worked out fine before, so I'll just stick with that. I do want these to be 3D because I want to give the appearance of some sort of depth in here. I don't want it to all look flat. So now I need to come up with something that says color theory. Okay, so the way that I did the other one is I went in here and I drew out the word color theory. Okay, and if I wanted each one of my letters to be a different color, you can highlight each letter, and then you can come over here to the color picker, and then you could pick a different color for each one. Okay, so I'm not going to do the whole thing obviously here, but you could do that if you wanted to. Okay. We could also give them different shades of gray. So I can go to my saturation and desaturate, and then just kind of pick different colors of gray that I can apply to that. Okay, and then I could color it through other methods. Now in the one that I had before, my example one, it actually went from being a color, just for this I'm just going to pick a color, red, and it switched to a different color. So, or I switched from black and white to color. So I'm going to go to my color correction and choose hue and saturation. So now I can just animate the saturation coming down, maybe the lightness coming up. Right? So it starts off as white, and then it drops down to this, and then it comes back up to that. Or maybe even a little bit more, right? Whatever we need our end result to look like, we can tweak it via this hue and saturation. Okay, just by setting some keyframes. I'm not going to go through that part, but obviously you can. Now, to get this thing to move the way that it did, I switched to the pen tool, and while I'm on this layer, I'm just going to draw out a path. Okay, and I'm going to use the handlebars really wide here. Pull this, oops. Come on, grab the arrow, and just pull this down a bit. And keep it nice and smooth. Okay, so basically I want the text to zoom in and like land right here. All right. So once I have this, then I can go into my text and go to my path and choose mask 1. And you'll see that now this is on my mask. So I could do a reverse path. There it is. So now it actually shows up on the correct side. The direction I drew it was important. So I drew it backwards, so that's why it did what it did. So if I were to delete that path, so I go into my mask, click it, and delete. I go to my pen, I draw it this way, we should get better results. Okay, so you see I didn't have to reverse it this time because it's right there. Okay, I could, and switch to the other side. I could also switch on like off perpendicular to path, that way it kind of comes in, you know, vertical all the time. Forcing alignment on, fits the entire thing. You get the idea. Okay, so what we're going to do is animate along this first margin here. So I keep it off the frame, I click on first margin, I have my bar down here, so I know I can't really go past this. I need a minute to process it. So right when this thing hits, I want to make sure it's already like locked in. So like right about here, I'm just going to scoot this in, and you can see you got to go pretty far. There we go, right about there. And I'm going to just move the path a little bit. Okay. Now, if you needed to adjust things like the size of your font and whatever, obviously you need to do that so that you can fit it onto the screen. So you may need to move this up. You may need to just adjust these points a little bit. You may even need to adjust this margin keyframe to pull it back. Okay, now the trick with this is to also make sure that your paths are straight, because you can see that it'll bend with it. Okay, so I can hold down shift and it'll straight, keep that straight. There you go, so it's pretty straight right there. All right, so now if I rewind it, you can see, there it comes in. Now another thing I did was I kept it kind of scaled and then scaled it up as it got here. That way it's kind of small and then pops in. So that's another thing you can do. So I can go to animate. I can go to scale. There we go. And I could also say enable per character 3D. All right. So now if I were to go and scale that down, and then I can use my range selector, right, to pop this in. I want to go that way. Okay. So I'm going to start off at 0, and I'm going to go back here, and you'll see that it's off, but that's fine because I'll fix it in a minute. I'm going to set a key here, go up a little bit, and right about here I think I want to have them all at 100. Okay, so now, oops, I went backwards, sorry, negative 100. There we go. That way it'll go this way. Okay, so they're all small and then they get bigger. Now, I don't want that to actually start yet. I want them to get bigger basically right when they're turning the corner. So I'm just going to pull this keyframe up. That way they'll still be small, and then once they start turning the corner, then you can see how they're going to get bigger as they fit in there. Now, I don't like how far apart they are, so on my text, I can play with this. Okay, this is your kerning. So I'm going to go and set a keyframe for this. So I'll jump back to here. Here. I'm going to pull this in pretty tight. I'm going to set a key on it, so I may need to options. Oh, it is there. Okay. I believe I have to set it here for that source text. And then when I get to the end, I just crank this up. There we go. So I can make it a little bit bigger, whatever. Okay. You could even go in here if you needed specific movement, and you could highlight a character and adjust the individual kerning of that. Okay. Now you could turn off these guides. Well, it's not really going to turn that off, is it? Nope. You can turn off some of the guides sometimes. There we go. Always click off of it to see. There we go. And then see if you like it. If you don't, tweak it, whatever. All right. So now what's going to happen is as it gets here, it's getting chunky again. Okay. And then right at the end, for some reason, it's like popping into there. Oh, right. Sorry. That's the wrong spot to be adjusting that. Let's go back here. Let's delete that. Let me reset this to 0. Cool. All right. So that was the wrong spot. This is this will do it for one thing, but it always pops it. I have to go to my animate and I have to drop on this character offset. So I can do that down here. If I go to this animator and I add it this way, character offset. Make sure that's the right one. Nope, that's not the right one. All right, I had to double check it because it just wasn't working. So yes, I'm adding tracking type to this. And what I was doing is tweaking it here after it's already off. Well, I don't want that. I need to go back here and then squeeze it all together. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to shrink everything together so it's one tiny word, and then as it comes around the corner, it's going to bulge into place. Okay, cool. So that's that piece. Again, you could still tweak some of the stuff here individually, and then this number will just reset back to that. So if I just hit U to get that back to default, now I can just turn my audio back on and then preview.
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
Okay. Now, let's say I wanted that all to happen quicker because it's...
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
Okay. I can do two things. One, I could scoot this down some, right? So I can give a little bit of space between my start of the animation and my actual text.
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
Okay. Another thing I can do is go here and hit U. Here's my keyframes. That's all I've animated is just the first margin and then the range selector. Those are the only two things I animated. So I could take these and just like squish these closer in. Now when I rewind and hit play,
color theory is an important part of the design process.
There we go. Maybe I'll spread that out a little bit more.
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
There we go. So that's good. Okay. So now I added a couple other things. So I could add motion blur to this, and that gives it a neat look. Definitely looks cool. I also added this other effect, just so you can see more things. You don't want to add too many bells and whistles, because then it's just going to look too busy. So I added under time, I added an echo. And what this is going to do is it's basically going to duplicate. Let me turn motion blur off. It basically duplicates what you have going on, okay? And it puts it on top of itself. So right now it's basically giving me one echo 0.033 seconds behind the first animation. So if I set this to, let's say, 5, now I'm going to have 5 echoes behind it. Now that's pretty unreadable. So what I have to do is take my decay and set this to like 0.9 or something. Maybe a little bit. Let's say 0.5. There we go. So now you can see it actually is decaying as it comes around the corner. And then when it stops, there you go. Then it's all bloop right back into it. So I could go back to where this is here. And instead of having this add, I can say maximum, or I can set this to screen, or I can set this to composite or blend. There you go. And so you can change different ways to see how this is coming out. Now, I don't really matter that it's unreadable at this point because I'm going to have motion blur on anyway. And I'm going to set this back to add, and you'll see that it gives you kind of this really neat glowy look as it's there. Okay? And so now when I rewind and I hit play, and this is why you don't want the audio on all the time, because now I'm playing this and it's going super slow and my audio sounds like I've been possessed by a demon. Okay, let's rewind it again.
Color theory is an important part of the design process.
So you can see what a neat look that is just doing that. Now you don't have to do this, and I recommend you not doing exactly what I do. But if you're out of options, you just don't know what to do, then yeah, go ahead and do it. You know, at least get the ball rolling. Okay, so there's the first part. Color theory is an important part of the design process, right? We could add other stuff in here too, just to kind of emphasize different parts of design or whatever. But for now, I'm just going to move on. So I'm going to go to my next audio clip. I would grab next number 2, and I would drop it down in here. Now, it's going to get really busy in here. If you look at this thing, pull that off, you can see how many layers I have. Oops, just move something. There we go. Just inside this one composition. So one of the things that will definitely help us out is color coding. So if I highlight all of these things that belong to number 1, and I go to this color and I pick one, like yellow, you'll see that these are all yellow, and that makes sense because now these are all together. So if I move this whole chunk, there we go, then all the animation and things that are tied together will go together. The other thing I can do is I can click on these little hiding guys. These are called shy guys. And once I click this guy, it hides them. That way they're still there. The animation's there, the text, the audio's still there, but it just hides it so we don't have to see it. Okay, I'm probably gonna need some of this stuff, so I'm gonna leave it right here. So now, my next one's coming in. So let's hit play and see what happens.
What we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors.
Okay, so what we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors. So let's do the same thing. So I'm gonna click on my word, and I'm gonna hit the space bar and then use the asterisk to add some markers.
What we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors.
Okay, so what we see and how we see it can be controlled simply by choosing the right colors. Okay, so those are the markers, the words that I want to pull out and have certain things kind of linked up to when I say those things. So what I've done here is I need to get rid of the word color theory. I can keep it on there, but once I drop down my art, I'll just show you. Once I drop this into here, it just becomes noisy. It's like, okay, well now we got this thing in here. So what I need to do is get rid of it, hide it, minimize it, do something with it. So for this one, let me just delete that for now. So for this one, what I want to do is maybe just take this. Maybe just take the opacity down. So if I go to my opacity, I just knock it down to like 15%. Maybe more, maybe like 10%. Okay. Yeah, I think it's in the way. Let's just get rid of it. There we go. Okay, so you can animate it off also. You know, just like we did with our other things, I can go to my animate and I could do scale or do something else and add a second animator on top of the other animator. So I have animator 2. I set that to 0 and use my range selector, make that go bye-bye. Right, and I could even add in opacity, and so now it's going to shrink down and get invisible. Okay, so I can do that also. I'll probably be It'll probably look a little bit nicer if I try to do something like that as opposed to just doing what I was doing before a second ago. Okay, just doing the regular straight opacity. So I'm going to go to my animator 2. I've already set my scale to 0, my opacity to 0. Open up my range selector, set this to negative 100. So that's the order I want to go. So I'm going to go negative 100 to 0. So I'm going to hit offset, go up a little bit, put it to 0. Oops, that's still there. Why are you still there? There it goes. I don't know why it's taking its time to go off screen. Okay, so it comes in, and it goes away. Alright, so now we need to bring in this logo. So I'm going to drop in the logo, close that, and I'm going to bring it right up to where we're going to need it, right about here. And I wanted this to be a little bit more apparent to see. So I created an ellipse, click off, and I'm just going to click in the center-ish, drag. Okay, it's oval, so I'm going to hold shift. And then I want it to go from the center, so I hold control. And then I can hold the space bar as I need to move it around. Okay, so I'm just kind of getting this eyeball to center it right about there. Then I can go to my scale, scoot it underneath it, nudge it over and up. Cool. Maybe pick a different color, not really liking that. Alright, that'll work. Okay, so now I have the Macomb logo, and I can scale both of these up at the same time, just so I can see them. A little bit, there we go. Okay, so now what I want to do is animate these things coming in. So I'm going to go to the 3D layers to make it a 3D layer, and I'm going to animate their position. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to pull them in the negative Z direction. So this is X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to pull it the negative Z, like negative 5,000. And this will be negative 5,000 also. I'll move it right there. There we go. Okay, so keyframe, keyframe. Okay, what we see right here, I'll set that now to 0, or sorry, negative 1 for the logo. And I'll set this one to 0 for the shape layer. Okay, now there's a reason I set this to negative 1 and 0. If they're both at 0, then they're basically on top of each other. So I wanted that to not happen. So now it's just going to zoom in and slap onto it. Okay, so I want the shape, the logo underscore BG, to come in first. So I just take the Macomb logo and scoot that down. Okay, and I can grab both of these, maybe scoot it over a little bit. There we go. So now if we just hit play,
what we see and how we see it can be controlled.
You'll see there's a subtle difference right there. Like white comes in, and then the MCC logo comes in. And then that, we'll hit our keyframes to be easy eased. Go to our graph editor, make sure we're seeing the speed graph. There we go. Now it happens so quick we don't really need a whole lot of speed adjustments on there.
What we see and how
there you go, that's good.
What we see and how we
And you see right when that hits that word, we're getting this thing in here. So that's what we want to see. So I want to obviously change the colors a little bit here too. So having this white and black was one thing. And then going to here, I want to change the colors to black and white. So I'm going to go to this. I'm going to, I need to keyframe this fill, right? So if I just change it now, it'll change it permanently. So if I open this up, I go to my contents, open that up, open my ellipse, open my fill, you'll see there's a color. So I can just say, click the color here. And this is where my white's going to be. So I need that to be back, obviously, when it was here. Okay, so when it first comes in, it's white. And then at this point, it's going to be black. And what it's going to do is it's going to transition. Okay, it's going to like fade to the other color. So that could be something that I want, but I may want it just to kind of pop into place. If that's the case, I can click on this keyframe, right-click it, and then say toggle hold. And what that means is basically stay that value until you get to the next keyframe, and then change. So there's no transition, it just pops. So I'll do the same thing on the MCC logo, okay? Now this one doesn't have, if I were to expand it, it doesn't have any stuff attached to it. You know, it has this material options, but that's not gonna help us out. So what I need to do is I'm gonna go to my MCC logo, I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna say create shapes from vector layer. And so what it does is it copies this layer, so now I have 2 of these, and then I don't need this one anymore, so I can just delete it. It creates shapes, okay? So now each one of these is now a shape. All right, so what I can do is just open up each one of these. Actually, let me see if I can go to that. Yep. See how I did that? I just clicked on all the groups, and I can open it. And then if I grab all the fills, and this part is obviously, it's not a quick process, but it is a process that works. Now for simpler shapes, it could work a lot easier, obviously. And I'm using, again, the MCC logo. You wouldn't need to use the MCC logo. You could use whatever. The point is that you're showing just a couple different examples of where color can change the way we're seeing something. There we go. So now we open these up. And I can click on the word color here. And that should set a key for all of them. Just to verify, I'll open this one. Yep, it set a key. Okay, cool. All right, so now I come back down to that. Okay, so here's where the other one is getting changed to black. So I'm just gonna move this one over. Let me line up my marker. There it is. I'll move this over. Okay, then I'm gonna line up my marker to the next one. And then I'm just gonna choose white. Okay, so again, I'll do the same little setup I did before. Now here's the nice part, because we've set keys on all of these, I can just go back to the top and hit U, and now it'll show me, here's all the keyframes. And then I can just grab all of those keyframes too far down, and then I can right click and say toggle hold, and now we're good. So it's gonna go, here it is coming in, white, and then black, and then it'll switch, black and white. And then when I have my next keyframe, or my next wording, right about here, that's when I change it to something else. So I'm going to go into this, and what I did was I grabbed different ones, okay? So this is the kind of sucky part of this, is that it's not really organized in the fashion that we would think it should be. So a lot of this is kind of guesswork as to where these things actually ended up. So what I'm doing is holding control and just clicking the color until I get the ones that I want. I think I jumped onto the bottom too. All right, there we go. So I think all of these ones, I'm going to change the color to black again. Actually, let's go with yellow. Okay. Go. Now it's a bit easier to see, so now I go this, this, and this. Now I could have drawn this also inside of Illustrator so that I had basically 2 parts, the top and the bottom. And that would have saved me a little bit of time. There we go. And then I'll make this red. And then again, I'll grab this keyframe in the center and make sure it's a hold keyframe. Otherwise, we're going to get a transition. So we're going to go from here, right? And then I'll go to my logo background and we'll do the same thing. I need this to be a different color now. So let's see what color goes good with this. Maybe like a bright orange. So even something like that, you know, because it's how we're viewing it is what the idea, right? All right, so then we'll click on this keyframe, toggle hold. Oops, and that one must be a keyframe off or something. Just a frame off. Yep, that's where that's supposed to happen. There we go. Okay, and then the last one is the actual like logo of what the college is. Maybe not the exact one, but pretty close. Okay, so it's that color, and then all of these. I can just click on that top one. You can see are going to be that blue. Okay, so again, we'll grab all of our keyframes. Make sure these are all on hold because we want them to pop to the next one. All right, so now let's listen to this one.
What we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors.
Okay, so that's pretty good. I could add another one in the middle just to kind of break this up, just so I have boom, 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 boom. So let's see what else I can come up with. Let's see. Let's just do something wild, like purple and yellow. Like that. Oops. Got that selected too. Okay, and just make sure we don't have any transitions. Everything looks good. Okay, cool. So now we'll listen to that again.
What we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors.
Cool. All right. So that's the process for that. So now I need to get this to transition to the next one, right? So I'll go here. And you always want to bring in the next clip and then see. Now I'm doing all of these basically right now in one composition, just so I can focus on each part and then transition from one part to the next. But there's nothing wrong too with doing these in separate compositions and then linking them in. So for, let's say, comp 3, I could just go to a brand new composition. Here's my audio.
The color wheel is the foundation for building successful color schemes.
Okay. And then I could create that color wheel, right? So if you remember, I have this color wheel here. I don't believe these two things I really need. Maybe I did need that. I'm getting some kind of error here. All right, well, it should be fine. I'm just going to copy these and go to the color wheel, paste it in. And I'll see that my little animation works, right? So now if I hit play,
the color wheel is the foundation for building successful color schemes.
That's like perfectly timed. I'm amazed at how awesome I am. Obviously I don't want a comp inside here, so always keep your stuff organized. So I drop this into my comps. And then what I could do is go back to comp 1, and I could drop comp 3 just right inside here. But I still have to create a transition from this area into that third one, right? So, you know, where does this come from? Where does that go? So what I did was I created this little rotation. So if I rotate these, and you'll see it kind of disappears. Part of this is because my background is like right on top of it, so I need to go to my background, I need to go to position, and I need to make this in the positive direction and then scale it up. There we go. And then the other part of this is just because of where they're rotating from. So if I go here and rotate, you can see that I lost my logo, okay? Because basically the logo is rotating in one spot, and then this is rotating just in a slightly different spot. And it's, you know, odd, but that's what it's doing, okay? So what I need to do is I need to basically group these together. So I'm going to create a null, and I'm going to call this MCC logo spinner, and I'm just going to parent these two items to the MCC logo spinner. Okay, so now if I grab this and rotate it, oops, make sure it's 3D, you'll see that I can see the logo all the way. Now when it goes around the opposite side, obviously I can't, but I'm not going to see it there anyway. Okay, so I need to get rid of this. So I'm going to come right here. That's right. And I'm just going to reset this to 0. I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm going to go up a smidge. And I will rotate this to 90 degrees-ish. Until it's like paper thin, like that. Gone. Okay? Now once it's like that, I'm just going to hold Alt and turn that off. That way this thing is gone. I'm also going to go to my 2 layers, Alt, right click, and that's gone. So now if I look at this, it goes, and these things pop in. Okay. Now the other thing I could do is, let's say I spun it a different way. Okay, let me delete this key here. Up there. And then what if I spun it that way? Yeah, nope, not liking that. It's like weird. Yeah, it's like not perfectly centered, so it just doesn't turn out right. So I'm gonna stick with what I had here. Okay, and that's the fun of playing around with this, is that we can do that kind of thing. All right, so there we go. All right, so I can give this a little bit of rotate too, make sure it's 3D, and just kind of pop it in there. So let's say that this is rotating this way at the same time that the other one is rotating. So I'm going to rotate this back like this. I'll set a key. I'll come up. So you can see in here, it looks like it's like rolling out. That's kind of cool. Alright, so now let's go to our rotation. Let's grab these. Again, we want to add this easy ease onto all of our keys. Easy ease on all of our keys. And we want to go to the graph editor. We want to grab these. There we go.
The color wheel is the foundation for building successful color schemes. Using the right colors. The color wheel is the foundation for building successful color schemes.
Okay, so that looks pretty good. So again, we just keep working. We just keep at it and go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Now, let's say at this point I said, you know, I'm getting to the part where I really want to see what this is going to look like in the end. So let's go and, you know, set up some stuff. So I'm going to take my comp 1, which is, let's say, my final animation comp. Okay, where everything's kind of coming together. I'll drop this into my comps. And then I will drop this onto a new comp. Okay, so I put it just inside this composition. No, there it is. It stops right there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of texture to this. So I found a picture on textures.com, which is this kind of grainy picture, you know, some sort of texture. I'm just going to drop it on top of here. And I'm going to change my switches and modes, and I'm going to set this to multiply. And what you're going to see is it looks pretty grungy, like it looks, you know, way too much. So I hit T, and I could play with this opacity a little bit. Okay, I don't want to go crazy with it, but I do want to add a little bit of dirt, a little bit of texture to the item without it being like intense. I could also try different modes. So sometimes like linear dodge might be a good one, or linear burn is sometimes a good one, or classic burn, sorry, not linear. And then again, playing with that value. You're always going to play with that value to get something that, you know, looks good. All right, so once I have this, here is, where'd that comp go? Okay, so my animation comp 2, I'm going to drop this onto another new comp, because what I want to do is I'm going to create a little vignette. Okay, and a vignette is basically just like darkening the corners. So I'm going to take this comp and duplicate it. I'm going to go to my oval tool. I'm just going to draw an oval. Okay, now if I set this mode to multiply, you'll see that basically the center of this gets really dark. Okay, if I turn off this layer, you can see what it's doing. That oval just cut out the center. So I'm going to go open the mask and I'm going to feather it like a madman, like that. I'm also going to invert it like that. Okay, so basically the center is super dark and the outside is not. So when I put this on top of the other one, you'll see what happens here is that we get this darkening edges and this lighter in the middle. Now it's way too much still, so I need to go into my expansion and just expand this out. There we go. And I could also put my opacity until I find something that looks decent. There we go. Cool. Okay. So now I still have my animation comp. This is where I'm doing all my work. You know, should go pretty quick. I have my color wheel for number 3, so if I need to change anything for number 3, I can jump in here. And then I have my comp that has the texture on it, and then I have my final comp, which has my vignette also. So now I hit play.
Color theory is an important part of the design process. What we see and how we see it can be controlled by simply choosing the right colors. The color wheel is the foundation for building successful color schemes.
Okay. So that's going to be your process from basically here on out for the rest of this. Just to kind of jump back to where I had mine in here, you'll see that I do have definitely a little drop shadow on this. So some things you'll pick up, you'll say, oh, I should add a drop shadow here. And add a drop shadow, no big deal. Let's see there. Okay, those things are spinning. And then you'll see these. This is basically just the echo. And what I did was I knocked down the size of all of those thicknesses. So all the thicknesses are down except for the red, yellow, and blue. And then I added that echo on there to get that. Okay. And then this that transfers into a circle. I just basically had circles timed up perfectly so that they would scale up right as those were landing. Okay. Now that part is a little bit trickier. Let's go into that area. So here is that area. So what I did was I had my red, yellow, and blue circles right there, and I duplicated each one 2 times. Okay, so here's my yellow 2, my red 2, and my blue 2. Now because of where I drew them here and their pivot was right there, all I have to do is go to my rotate and I can animate, oops, make sure it's on there, and I could animate them basically just rotating into position. Now as they're rotating, basically it's going from the red and it's rotating up, the yellow is rotating over. As they get closer, I have another one. Where'd that one go? Way up here? Yes, it is. Okay. I have another one, which is an orange, a green, and a purple circle that are simply just fading on. I just have their opacity set so that they fade on to give me that color. Because of how After Effects works with colors, it's not going to work in a traditional sense where we can just basically, you know, mix the colors in here realistically. Okay. Some of the colors will mix, and we can do like the CMYK stuff, but they don't work for the red, yellow, and blue. So now we have the orange, green, and purple. And then I did the same thing for this. So for this one, I did the same thing. I duplicated twice each one of these, and I just set some keyframes to rotate each one in both directions. And then as they get there, I'm keyframing one off and keyframing the other on. I also have this triangle inside here that is kind of rotating and lining up. So when we talk about territory colors, you can see that the triangle lines up with where the territory are. Probably need to scale it down just a little bit. Okay, so that's going to be it for the entire thing. Just doing all the little animations for it. I'll have a little bit more tweaking and whatever else, or little tips of animation as we go. But because of the nature of this assignment, it's not going to be like, now click here, now click here, now click there. So you got to come up with what kind of designs you want to have on there. Now you want to also make sure that all of your layers are matched to where they need to be, right? So like here's my color theory, my pale background. So the background is throughout, right? We see the background throughout the entire thing. My color theory though is gone right here. So why have it? So if I click on the color theory and alt right bracket, it goes bye-bye. So there's color theory, disappears, and I got that. Okay, so you want to make sure that all your layers are basically simplified to fit in the spots that they need to. That's my logo spinner. Okay, here is my number 2 stuff. So I'm going to give this a color 2. And I try to pick a different color. So there's lavender. Here's number 3. So I'll pick a different color. Aqua. Sometimes you're just going to run out of colors because there's only so many to pick from. Okay, and what's neat too is you can do select label group and it grabs everything in there. Okay, so that's what you're going to keep doing. Remember that you're going to do all the way down to number 8. Okay, so you're going to do 1 through 8. Just drop them in, same process, do a little animation for it. And when you get to 9 through 13, you're only going to pick 2 of these. So you don't have to do all 5 of them. You can do only 2 if you want to. If you really want to push it and get a better final grade and show that you're really pushing your skills, then you would do maybe 3, 4, or 5 of them. Okay, so once you do those, then you'll come down and you'll do these 2. Then you'll pick one of these, triadic, complementary, or analogous, and then you'll do the final 2. Okay, so all of these things will be added in here once you're done. Now it's obviously going to take some time, so plan accordingly. Make sure you have some ideas and sketches of what you want to happen, because it just makes your process go a lot quicker. The internet's a great resource for kind of getting inspiration for how to do this. And then obviously your classmates and just kind of like messing around. Okay, so that's where we're going to drop it off for here, and then we're just going to continue on with little tips of ways to animate stuff inside of After Effects.